Friends, thanks for dialing in YouTube today as we discuss the subject of walking with God in the garden. I want to tell you about a little experience I had this week. I was having a Bible study with a father and his two children. And one of the children, about age 9, asked me a gardening question. He wanted to know what he could grow this time of the year and what kind of a contraption should he have, because they can't have it in the backyard due to too much concrete, would help make a good garden. It gave me a wonderful opportunity to share a little information about gardening. So for him, it was to build what we call a raised bed, 4 feet by 8 feet, and then to put the right soil in that container. And then the 3 particular products that I felt would work for him would be to plant some carrot seed, some beet seed, and maybe even a tomato plant. He was just enthused and excited over the possibility of raising a garden. Well, we all are in a garden. I mentioned that before here on this program. Our garden is where God has planted us, and we have a responsibility as we live within this garden to tend it, to nurture it, to bring order out of chaos, to straighten things up. I've been spending a fair amount of time in my garden recently because I am planting the seed for the summer crop. It's time here in Southern California, even though it is only April. I received a phone call from a friend of mine in Michigan this past week who said, "We woke up this morning to 4 inches of snow." Well, I'm beyond that now here in Southern California. So my task now is to prepare the ground, plant the seed, nurture it, and then by July, hopefully, do some harvesting. Actually, I'm already in the harvest stages with beets and carrots and lettuce and turnips and the enthusiasm of looking forward to the rest of the harvest. But more important is the harvest of life. As we stop to think about where we are, is your life being productive? Do you feel strengthened every day? Are you planting seeds that will benefit not only you, but many other people as the product grows? Maybe seeds of hope, of kindness, of love, of forgiveness. Seeds that have to do with character and enthusiasm. I belong to a civic club here in Escondido, and I find my biggest task is not with new ideas, but with enthusiasm. I remember a speech given by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale when I was attending his church in New York. And on this particular Sunday, he was preaching about enthusiasm. And he said enthusiasm is to be in God. I believe that is true. The more we want to be enthusiastic, to share something of worth with other people, it is to be enthused in God. And that's the garden that God has put you in. We need to live with enthusiasm in our day. I share with you today, as I do every week, a passage of Scripture, a story. And we're in the story of David, who is becoming the king of Israel. But before he's king, he has to go through a number of unbelievable tasks. The Israelites were fighting the Philistines. They were their enemy. Always an obstacle to peace and fulfillment. But in the battle against the Philistines, there was an obstacle. And the obstacle was a giant of a man called Goliath. Goliath spread fear and terror amongst the Israelites. What is most interesting is that more recently, I have heard that the war between Russia and Ukraine is like a David and Goliath fight. The Goliath is Russia. The David is the Ukraine. Well, as we look at the story, we find that there's fear on the part of the Israelites. There is no man that can match the strength of Goliath. So every time Goliath walks out in the middle of the field, he shouts to the Israelites, and they all scatter out of fear. Friends, we have Goliaths in our world today. There are many of them. Fear, unhappiness, insecurity, stress. We also have depression and oppression. We find division on the part of our political parties. People fear the dropping of the stock market, the loss of the value of their money. We read about it every day. I'm told that young people have given up hope because there's so much despair. And consequently, the highest rate of suicides is between the age of 14 and 24. It's an alarming thing. And we live today throughout our entire country with homelessness. There's not a politician running for public office today that does not address that issue, whether they have a solution or not. Where do we go when we have these Goliaths, these Philistines who are there terrorizing us, keeping us down, discouraged in our lives, so that we cannot begin the day with happiness nor end it with confidence? I share with you today a brief reading, and it's when David is brought before Saul, the king of Israel. And Saul has heard about David and some of the questions that David is asking about this giant that is terrorizing the Israelites. Listen to what David has to say. And I read it for you today. It's just a very brief passage of Scripture. It is found in the 17th chapter of 1 Samuel. And I read for you today, verse 32. David said to Saul, now David just a teenager, he's just a kid, Saul is the king, and here is what he says: let no one lose heart on account of the Philistines. Your servant will go and fight him. I find this passage of Scripture not only intriguing, but healing. Healing. Do not lose heart. In our world today, there is a David. He's called the Son of David, Jesus Christ. And he says to the entire world, he says to the Ukrainians, he says to the Russians, he says to people everywhere, the homeless, the heartless, the helpless, do not lose heart. Do not lose heart. Can we hear these words today? I don't want to just sound repetitious. I don't believe in that in terms of preaching. Sometimes it seems to convey the message, but I want to just emphasize that again today. Whatever your circumstance might be, maybe it's old age. I hate to use that terminology, but we could say because you live longer. Maybe it's the fear of the future. It could be sickness or inability. Maybe it's family problems. The divorce rate today is outrageously high. Depression is an all-time high. It seems as if because of inflation and all the other factors of life, people have lost heart. But Jesus comes. He is the Son of David, like David the king, eventually. And Jesus says, do not let your heart be troubled. Don't let your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. And if I might just quote once again this statement from David, and I think it's so appropriate for us in our world today. Let no one lose heart on account of everything that's happening. And God knows so much is happening, because he says, your servant, and Christ says this to us today, will go out and fight him. The devil, friends, doesn't stand a chance with Christ. He's out there to fight him and defeat him. God bless you today with this hope. Do call in again. I appreciate being able to share with you here on this YouTube program, Walking with God in the Garden.